Okay, the subject matter is going to be AIDS in Atlanta and Black African youth, particularly gay youth. There's a high tendency for them to catch AIDS. Roughly 1 in 2 out of 2017 of the gay men in Atlanta were catching AIDS, from my understanding. How many of them are catching it through groin sores? 1 in 2 black men in America have groin sores. And 1 in 2 gay black men in Atlanta are getting AIDS, or at least the virus that causes AIDS. So why is this happening? Well, let's go back to my my old 10S rule, which is the information that was available at that time was only about 10% effective as far as mathematically concerned. As best I could come up mathematically with it. It based the system that if somebody had groin sores, there was a very high chance of them having AIDS. I mean, if they had AIDS, there was a high chance of them having groin sores. But it wasn't the other way around. HSV patients generally had low rates of HIV. So as a reason for that, my test had a high false positive rate. Now I have updated it to the AIDS exposure test. And there's a reason I updated it to that. The new PEP treatments have become available since then. They weren't available when I first made the 10S roll. So denoting the difference in the availability of a cure in the PEP treatment, if it's given within that 48-hour window that I direct as an exposure, if you're exposed to the high virus and you take that PEP treatment, you get an 80 to 90% chance of survival, according to the CDC. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you people is, if you find you've shared needles, had sex with somebody with groin sores or with hemorrhoids, hemorrhoids can bleed just like groin sores, so you got to watch out for that too. Even though there's no test been done to substantiate that, I can infer it from the fact that it bleeds, which has been substantiated. These things have to be watched out for. Now, in the United States, groin sores constitute about 20% of the population that gets HSV of that type. There's another type of HSV which runs it up to 50%, called HSV1, but it's mostly in the mouth. It's not in the sex organs. This groin sores in the United States of America, it's a fairly low infection rate. Meaning, just because they got groin sores doesn't necessarily mean they've got the AIDS virus. It's not a high infection rate at all. But when you get into the groups, I've tried to get this information out of the CDC. They haven't sent it to me yet that I know of. I'm trying to nail it down into the groups as to which groups are the most affected both by HSV and HIV. I'm trying to narrow that down. It shouldn't require a experimental study. It should be a mathematical study of known medical records. But they did that for me with the 2012 World Health Organization HSV, and they had dropped to less than half of the previous time they had done that, which was 2003. From 2003 to 2012, the number of HSV victims in Africa, more than half of them were dead, either by natural age or by AIDS, which is a telling story in and of itself. And I found out in Swaziland, and I've got this on another YouTube video, so I'm just going to briefly touch on it here. Anyway, I got the information from avert.org a couple of years ago, as far as the statistics go, the 27%, the 24%, and a current 23% infection rate of HIV in the population of Swaziland. The basic thing is that not only are large segments of the population have HIV, we also found out, or at least I found out, when I did the mathematics on it, using both the figures from HIV and the figures from HSV, I realized something. Upwards of 70%, depending on whether you talk about the maximum or minimum of the University of Washington study, which was 80-90% of HIV victims had HSV. Well, the maximum end of that was 77.4%. I think the minimum was like 60%. Of the HSV population, which is the ones that have the growing source, in Swaziland, also had AIDS. With a high virus that causes AIDS. This is a disturbing trend. Very disturbing trend. It seems to be moving into Atlanta, Georgia a couple of years ago. That may be the main reason why it's still spreading amongst gay black men to the extent it is. For some reason, Hispanics are also having a problem. But Hispanics generally live in the southern United States. Don't know why, but they do. And that's where most of the blacks that have AIDS live. So there could be some interactions there. I don't know. They were both heavily into the Democratic Party. I mean, you can sit here and do demographics on them all day long just to try to guess why in the world both of those groups, both of them in the southern United States, have both got high, continually climbing age rates. I mean, they're still actually adding more people to the rolls who have AIDS than they had the previous year. Their rates are still going up, particularly among gay black men and gay Hispanics. How many of them have growing sores? Out of black men, if you figure half of black men, that's 4% of the United States population in total. That's how many black men have growing sores. 4% of the total U.S. population is black men with growing sores. Of that total population, 0.6%, including gay black men, have AIDS. So it's a lot of information here. I'm trying to give the sites as I'm going through the video instead of putting them in the descriptions, though I'll probably add some of the descriptions. AIDS is moving along very, very slowly. In most of the world, it's starting to decline because the number of HSV patients have declined. I think that's the main cause of it declining. The use of condoms has probably reduced the contraction of HSV, particularly groin sores or HSV2. Well, what else can I say? I'm running an 8-minute video here. Like I say, if you use my AIDS exposure test, it can tell you, give you a good idea whether that person you just had sex with could have gave you HIV, AIDS. In some countries in the world, it's a very high chance. Some countries in the world, it's still a low chance. In the United States, we've never really had that big of a problem with HIV. Right now, it ain't even in the top 10 causes of death in the United States. It was there for a while, but it no longer is. Well, Thomas Willis out here. Have a good one.